let's hold it in abeyance. Let's stay until the end of the presidential term. We are dismissing, and therefore, to your question, I think this means this is off of the worry list for Donald Trump, unless there's some strange situation where they would try to refile. I think that would be very unlikely at the end of the presidential term.
And Jessica, why do you think that is, that they didn't propose hitting pause? I mean, we saw in the hush money case in New York just a week or two ago that the prosecutors there said, OK, wait, maybe you wait to sentence Donald Trump until 2029. Maybe we just wait for 4 years. But that's not what Jack Smith is saying.
That's not. And this is such an important question. And I think it's due to a couple of things. One is where this case is. And Jack Smith is saying even the idea, as we've quickly read this filing, even the idea that this could be hanging over the president's head for the entirety of his administration, that's the type of burden that we want to guard against. Now, whereas the New York case, there's frankly, I think, very little hanging over the president's head in comparison. That is a situation where the jury has already convicted him. And the only question is one of sentencing. There's not a question of, will we proceed to trial? What will the trial look like? Will he have to sit as a criminal defendant? And will there be any motion practice during a presidential administration? So those particular cases are at very different places. Again, when it comes to the D.C. election interference case, obviously never even went to trial. Now we think it never will. The New York case went to trial and the jury convicted. Much less for the president to do other than just to sit there for a sentencing potentially in 4 years. And let's remember a sentencing where it's very unlikely that he would get any time in prison.
That is such an important distinction, and part of the reason that Jack Smith had been pushing for so long for a speedy trial in this case. Jessica Levinson, legal expert, thanks so much. I want to go now to CBS News senior White House correspondent Weijia Jiang. Weijia, President Biden has a history of refusing to weigh in on President-elect Trump's legal troubles. And in fact, these days, he seems to avoid weighing in on his successor at all.
Nancy, that's right. You know, recently, President Biden hosted President-elect Trump here at the White House for a meeting that lasted just about 2 hours. And after that, we have heard very little from President Biden himself about what they spoke about, any notes that he passed along, any agenda items that he wanted to focus on, even though we know before this meeting during the campaign, President Biden was very clear and explicit in describing what he claimed were threats that Trump posed, even calling him a fascist at one point. And you're absolutely right. This White House, especially Biden, has gone to great lengths to separate themselves from any of Trump's legal cases, even especially this one and the ones that we have just laid out today. That doesn't mean, though, Nancy, that they haven't expressed their belief that Trump was responsible and played a role in inciting the riots that we saw on January 6th, 2021. That said, so far we have been pinging our White House officials and sources, and they have not weighed in yet on this monumental decision. But on a tangential note, Nancy, I think it is important to remind viewers what President Biden has said about the Supreme Court immunity ruling that would apply to future presidents as they acted in their official capacity. He said it was a dangerous precedent because the power of the office will no longer be constrained by the law, even including the Supreme Court of the United States. But as for this decision by Jack Smith, Nancy, so far we are still waiting to hear from the White House.
Weijia Jiang at the White House. Great point. Thank you so much. And breaking news once again, special counsel Jack Smith has moved to dismiss the 2020 federal election interference case against President-elect Donald Trump. He cited a longstanding Justice Department policy shielding sitting presidents from prosecution. Our coverage will continue on CBS News 24/7, your local news, and tonight on the CBS Evening News. This has been a CBS News Special Report. I'm Nancy Cordes in Washington.
And back to that CBS News 24/7 coverage of this withdrawal by Jack Smith of what has been a case that has dominated headlines. We just got the words of Jack Smith in that filing. We wanted to share it with you here on CBS News 24/7. Mr. Smith writes, as a result of the election held on November 5th, 2024, the defendant, Donald J. Trump, will be inaugurated as president on January 20, 2025. He goes on to say it's long been the position of the Department of Justice that the United States Constitution forbids the federal indictment and subsequent criminal prosecution of a sitting president. He then goes on to write, that prohibition is categorical and does not turn on the gravity of the crimes charged, the strength of the government's proof, or the merits of the prosecution, which the government stands fully behind. Based on the department's interpretation of the Constitution, the government moves for dismissal without prejudice of the superseding indictment under federal rule of criminal procedure there. But there's a little bit of a distinction there. It's saying because of this federal criminal procedure, as it stands to sitting presidents, they are going to have to follow that. However, Jack Smith writes that this is not to turn on the gravity of the crimes charged, the strength of the government's proof, or the merits of the prosecution, which he continues to say the government stands fully behind. CBS News 24/7 will continue having coverage on this breaking news of that 2020 election fraud case against President-elect Donald Trump, which now is gone. Now let's go right now to Robert Laguerre. He is going to join us for a conversation and continue this. Robert, I thought this was very interesting, that distinction between what is procedure as it is in the Constitution relative to a crime facing a sitting president of the United States, but also Jack Smith getting in a 1-2 punch there saying we still stand fully behind the charges.
Hey, yeah, good afternoon, Reed. Thanks for having me. So in the 6-page filing, you're right. Jack Smith is saying he and his team stand by the merits of the case, but point to Justice Department policy saying that a sitting president can't be prosecuted for a federal crime. This is a long-standing policy that the Justice Department has held, previously ran into during the Mueller investigation. And so this is long-standing department policy. We expected this based on our reporting here at CBS News. We expected that Jack Smith was going to be winding down these cases, the 2 cases he has against President-elect Trump. In these cases, in this D.C. case, he alleged 4 counts that he charged, amounting to what he alleged was a scheme to stay in power after the 2020 election. The other case is in Florida. That's a case in which Trump previously faced dozens of counts related to his alleged illegal retention of national defense information, classified documents, and obstructing an investigation. That case was already dismissed. Jack Smith is now appealing that dismissal, basically on grounds that he says that he was illegally appointed, disagreeing with the previous court's ruling. He's appealing that. We're waiting for his decision there and what he's going to do. But here at CBS News, we're reporting that he's working on winding down that case as well. And so what we expect is that Smith is going to likely file something similar, saying we stand by the case, we stand by the legality of our charges, but in the end of the day, we can't bring this case anymore because he is the president-elect.
And Robert, our viewers today are going to be hearing this phrase a lot, hold in abeyance. Why will this not be held in abeyance, and what does that mean? Oh, there's Nicole Killian. Robert, we're going to talk to Nicole Killian in just a minute, but I'll let you answer that question.
Oh, so no, feel free. All I was going to say was this is not going to be held in abeyance because the former president is now the president-elect. And so what's happening now is the Justice Department is moving to dismiss these charges outright. And so this is something they can't hold these charges anymore because, as we've been talking about, the prosecution will no longer be happening.
And Robert, does this mean that this just goes away forever?
It does. At the moment, it does. That's right. So what we do expect is that Jack Smith will be resigning from his post at the end of this presidential term, Joe Biden's term. He was appointed in 2022 by Merrick Garland to serve as special counsel. Our reporting here is telling us that he is likely to resign or leave office before Trump is sworn in. That is the likely trajectory now. And so then once the prosecutor's office is closed, there's nothing more to do.
Nothing more to do. Could this affect how other cases that the president faces be dealt with?
Well, as we were mentioning, there was the case before the 11th Circuit, the classified documents case, which is before the appeals court, and we expect a similar trajectory there. The other 2 cases Trump faces in New York, that conviction in New York and the hush money case, that case was supposed to be sentenced this month. but that was delayed based on the complexities around him being the president-elect. And then to be determined on the Fulton County, also related to the 2020 election. Not sure where that's going yet, but at the moment, that's on hold.
And while we wait to talk to Nicole here in just a moment, I want to ask you another question. Senator-elect Adam Schiff of the state of California, relative to that New York case, is saying, look, let's not throw this out. We can wait until after Donald Trump is no longer president to continue there. Do you think any of that narrative that's starting to bubble up, just put this one on hold, will hold with the judge or the DA there?
Good question. I think that's yet to be seen. I think what's important to remember in all of these cases is that there was conduct that was charged here. The conviction in the New York case is a bit different. Here in the DC and the Florida cases, these were pre-trial, right? So we were going through these pre-trial motions. And so there wasn't really anything on the books yet other than these charges. And it's worth noting that Trump and his legal team, he both pleaded not guilty and denied wrongdoing. And his legal team succeeded quite efficiently at delaying the case in DC based on the presidential immunity decision, and then getting the case thrown out in Florida based on the argument that Jack Smith shouldn't have been appointed at all and was unlawfully named special counsel. And so the trajectory of these two cases, even if the election hadn't gone Trump's way, was very uncertain. We didn't know how the judge in DC was going to apply the Supreme Court precedent. We didn't know how the 11th Circuit was going to rule on the appeal on Judge Eileen Cannon's ruling. So there's a lot of uncertainty there in all of Jack Smith's cases that now are not so uncertain.
All right, we've got it in writing. Thank you so much for talking to us today on CBS News 24/7. Let's continue the conversation with CBS News congressional correspondent Nicole Killian. Nicole, a lot of people are saying, as you join us there from Florida, that this was no surprise. Any indication what the Trump camp has to say about this?
Yeah, well, we just got a statement from the president-elect's communications director, Stephen Chung, and I'm just going to read this to you directly. He says the American people reelected President Trump with an overwhelming mandate to make America great again. Today's decision by the DOJ ends the unconstitutional federal cases against President Trump and is a major victory for the rule of law. He goes on to say that the American people and President Trump want an immediate end to the political weaponization of our justice system, and we look forward to uniting our country. So again, that statement coming from Trump Communications Director Stephen Chung. But clearly, as far as President-elect is concerned, they never saw this investigation or this case as legitimate. The President-elect time and again even called Jack Smith a deranged and many other names over the course of this investigation. So certainly this is welcome news on the part of the Trump team. And as you heard Rob mention, obviously there are still other cases out there pending with respect to election interference, most notably down in Georgia, although that case has long been stalled for many, many months now over the fate of the district attorney down there. So at this point, it's unclear what impact or bearing dismissing this federal case could potentially have on that state case down in Georgia. But either way, this clears a major hurdle for the president-elect going forward.
And speaking to the New York case, which we do have convictions, because we are talking about the difference between charges and convictions, that New York case, the Trump camp also would like to see that one dismissed altogether. What is next where their efforts are concerned for just entire dismissal?
Yeah, well, we know that there are some additional hearings pending next month, so we will have to see how the process plays out there. But yes, the hope is that certainly on the part of the president-elect and his team is that that case could be dismissed. Again, we will have to see how things play out. But as we know, the president-elect has been very critical of these cases and charges against him. He has argued that he has been politically targeted, and you are seeing that in some of the selections he most recently made for his cabinet, most notably Matt Gaetz, who ultimately stepped down as Attorney General designate. But part of the reason the president-elect initially named him is he wanted someone who could shake up the Justice Department because he was so enraged by the way a lot of these cases were handled by the department. So that being said, obviously there's a new pick now, Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi, but still a lot of concern on the part of the president-elect and many Republicans about the Justice Department and its fate going forward.
Nicole Killian, thank you so much for joining us on the stream after you've just been on national television as well with our team in New York. We appreciate you so much. Thank you. When we come back, more on this breaking news in Jack Smith's case against Donald Trump, which is now no longer a case. It is gone. Plus, we're watching another case out of Southern California. The Menendez brothers, the double slaying of their parents, and the question, should new evidence let them walk free? It's a busy day on CBS News 24/7. Stay with us.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now.
We got something crazy. And reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Time.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun.
But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking,
Welcome to the idea of being a human being.
innovative, and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
At this moment, terrorists could be plotting another attack.
9/11 triggered a counter-terrorist system that included a secret database.
This person needs a closer look.
A growing list of nearly 2 million people, including some Americans who say they're innocent.
For 1 hour flight, I have to spend 6 hours to go and come back.
CBS Reports explores the system, the people responsible for it, and those pushing for change.
I'm not fighting against them. I'm fighting for them to do the right thing.
The Watch List, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Don't miss true crime anytime you want, anywhere you go. With the 48 Hours podcast. Real crimes, real lives, real justice.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Listen to 48 Hours on Apple Podcasts.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Imagine yourself in Manhattan with no police, no army, no mayor.
The people of Haiti stare down poverty, corruption, natural disasters, and violence.
90% of the guns that are used by gangs in Haiti are American guns.
But with an unbreakable spirit and eternal optimism.
There are days where I cry, but we can't be discouraged. We still believe in Haiti.
They're still able to look ahead with hope.
Haiti is on the brink of transformation, a radical shift. Haitians are coming together and saying things must change.
Fighting for Haiti, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Hey there, welcome to The Uplift.
I thought she was a groom, and I stepped back and I went, oh, you're the queen. She's going to be with me every instant that I'm alive.
I just wanted to see if you'd go to Disneyland with me today.
I look over at him and he's smiling.
I'm going to remember that the rest of my life.
They told us when he was going to be born, he was only going to live for 30 minutes. It's really a miracle that he's with us today.
The Uplift. Stream now on the free CBS News app.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my 2 good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings.
A CBS News investigation. People looking for love, finding their life savings gone.
This could happen to anybody.
And sometimes losing their lives. Anything for love. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
You're watching CBS News 24/7, and that breaking news on the 2020 election fraud case against President-elect Donald Trump. It is no more. Special counsel Jack Smith filed a motion to Judge Chutkan asking for those charges to be dropped. They will go in the history books now. This comes as a result of Donald Trump's 2024 victory and Justice Department precedent that bans the prosecution of sitting presidents. A reminder for our viewers, Jack Smith charged Trump last year for plotting to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election after an exhaustive investigation about the events surrounding the insurrection at the Capitol building. So we're going to continue our conversation now with CBS News legal contributor Jessica Levinson joining us now for more. Jessica, I just got my hands on Jack Smith's actual language. I want to run this part of it by you. He says, that prohibition is categorical and does not turn on the gravity of the crimes charged, the strength of the government's proof, or the merits of the prosecution, which the government stands fully behind. If I'm interpreting that, I'm taking that as Jack Smith is doing this because it's procedural, not because he doesn't believe in the case that he built. What do you think?
Absolutely. I think he's saying, we think this is a strong case. This has nothing to do with the case that we brought, the strength of the evidence, the law behind us. What it has to do with is the fact that President Trump won the election. And there's an Office of Legal Counsel memo, in fact, 2 of them, that say you don't prosecute a sitting president. And this case never went to trial. And we could have long conversations about why it didn't go to trial and the timing. But I hear him say, I have no choice, but make no mistake, I'm not saying anything about the strength of our case. In fact, I think what he's saying pretty clearly is we still think it's a strong case. It's just not a case that's going to be brought, at least not until the end of this president. I know you've been talking about this. The language, I think, leaves open the possibility that the case could be refiled after the presidential term. I don't think that's likely, but that would be the only scenario really where you could see this case revived.
So the reporting that this is open and shut forever is not true. They could feasibly have a window that after his presidency, they could go back into this.
Well, Jack Smith is saying dismiss without prejudice, which means there's the possibility that you could refile. I just don't see it. Now, I will say there's 2 more hurdles left. One is he's saying we want to dismiss. A judge still has to say okay. I do think that Judge Chutkan, the federal judge here, will say okay. And then 2, we have to determine whether or not she says with or without prejudice, assuming, again, she does say we can dismiss the case. If it's dismissed with prejudice, that means you can't refile. If it's dismissed without, then the argument they could make is, well, the statute of limitations, meaning the time limit on bringing these claims, that basically is paused. And so they could refile at the end of the term. I don't know that they would do that. But the first thing they would need to do if they did is they still have to tackle whether or not this case goes away because of the Supreme Court's decision in that big immunity case.
All right, so we will be listening for with or without prejudice. Really quickly, before we talk about another major case, I just want to ask, how soon do you think Judge Chutkan will rule on this?
She could set this very quickly. Obviously, I don't think the defense will oppose this motion to dismiss. And she could decide to have a hearing. She could decide just based on the papers, which I think is probably more likely than not, given that there's agreement between the parties. I'm specifically saying very quickly and not, I think it's going to be Wednesday or I think it's going to be Monday, because that I just don't know.
All right, Jessica, while we have you on, we just got some breaking news attributed to the Associated Press, the Justice Department also abandoning the charges in the classified documents case. That was fast.
This is the day where everything is winding down. Now, the classified documents case, Reed, as you've been talking about, is in a different place. That case actually was dismissed by the trial court judge, Judge Eileen Cannon, not based on the allegations, but based on her conclusion that special counsel Jack Smith was not properly appointed. That question was, I was about to say is, but was up on appeal before the 11th Circuit. That's a circuit court in that area. At this point, it looks like Jack Smith is going to say, just like he is for the DC election interference case, we have to wind these cases down. Again, you don't prosecute a sitting president. And it looks like both of these federal cases, as we suspected, but for different legal reasons, will be concluding.
So, Jessica, we have about 40 seconds left in show. These are 2 very big dominoes to fall in the favor of the president-elect. What will this do to the other cases, just by way of a messaging standpoint, to others who have the power to decide the fate of the other cases he's facing?
So I actually don't think anything to a certain extent, because these are the federal cases. The Georgia case, I think, goes away for other reasons, but partly because you're not going to, as a state, bring a case against a sitting president. And the New York case has already concluded. So that's just really a question of sentencing. Sorry.
Jessica Levinson, it's always great to talk to you. Some major breaking news here on CBS News 24/7. We'll continue with Jessica and our experts all around the country and our reporters around the country digging into Jack Smith, this news that Donald Trump is free and clear where that case is concerned.
CBS Mornings Plus, clearly more news, more smart conversation.
More money-saving tips, more recipes.
More uplifting ways to get you on your way.
Plus, more sports, more weather.
Clearly more CBS Mornings.
Plus, sunshine.
Washington is the seat of power. National security, foreign policy, global economics, every story comes through Washington in some way. We bring some of the most powerful voices in America to the table. We don't just ask the questions, you have to go deeper. We try to understand what's at the heart of the issue we're talking about, to then come forward with solutions.
Face the Nation on CBS.
I have a dorky look to me. I don't look like a criminal at all.
60 Minutes has reported on fraudsters, criminals, and hoodlums. But what this minor league thief was able to do surprised even us.
These are Yogi Berra's World Series rings.
A sports story you'll have to see to believe.
Need more time with 48 Hours? Go deep behind every true crime episode with first-hand accounts from 48 Hours Investigations.
Were you at all prepared for what happened in this case?
Shock is the word that comes to mind.
Get inside the twists and turns and get in on the case. Listen to Postmortem from 48 Hours, now available wherever you get your podcasts.
I think we're very cute.
Yeah, I think we need to send out a Christmas card like this.
Yeah, let's do that.
Dollar Jill.
If you can't get into the market, it's okay. Renting is fine.
I wonder how Serena is feeling.
That's a really good question. No one's asked me that yet.
You're 70 years old?
70, yeah.
I'm 21.
We'll see you 7 o'clock sharp.
Sunday morning, the Music Man, T-Bone Burnett, plus Ted Danson, and Martha Stewart with Just the Recipe. Listen for the trumpet.
I report from a lot of war zones, but I don't really take the same risks.
He's one of the bravest war correspondents 60 Minutes has ever met. But it's his relationship with his mother that you will remember. Plus, the robots making marble masterpieces in Italy.
As a kid growing up in Chicago, there was one horror movie I was too scared to watch. It was called Candyman. But did you know that the movie Candyman was partly inspired by an actual murder? Listen to Candyman, the true story behind the bathroom mirror murder, wherever you get your podcasts.
The CBS News original 60 Minutes opens its archives.
Pretty loose for a Friday night.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's not my first show.
With moments you haven't heard before.
It's almost more fun that way when you have something to prove.
Listen to 60 Minutes, a second look, wherever you get your podcasts.
Superstar approaching, superstar approaching.
Let's get your popcorn and get ready.
Come on, Julia.
Oh, no.
I will if you will.
You go, gal.
Yeah, boy.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us here on CBS News 24/7. I'm Lindsay Reiser, and we are following breaking news out of Washington and out of Florida. Special counsel Jack Smith has filed to dismiss the federal election interference case out of Washington, D.C., and the classified documents case out of Florida, both against President-elect Donald Trump. Smith cited the Justice Department's policy against prosecuting sitting presidents. The president-elect has faced charges in connection with his alleged efforts to overturn the election results of 2020, as well as his handling of classified documents. We have team coverage for you. CBS News Justice Department reporter Rob Legary has been covering this case for us. And CBS News legal contributor Caroline Polisi is here to provide analysis. So, Robert, I'm going to go ahead and let you handle both of those cases and what Jack Smith said in both of those filings to dismiss the election interference case and the appeal surrounding the documents case, because we know Judge Cannon had already tossed that.
Sure. Well, Lindsay, thanks for having me. As a reminder to viewers, this was expected, and this is not much of a surprise from the special counsel. The Justice Department has a longstanding policy, as you mentioned, forbidding the federal prosecution of a sitting president being at the top of the executive branch, where the Justice Department also sits. And so federal regulations dictate that sitting president cannot be prosecuted. Jack Smith was appointed in 2022 to take over these two cases, the election case and the classified documents case. They have both proceeded to varying degrees of success and failure. The classified documents case was dismissed in July. The election case was appealed all the way to the Supreme Court. They made a decision on presidential immunity and sent it back down to the federal court for interpretation. Both of those cases were ongoing in various stages of litigation. An appeal in the 11th Circuit in Atlanta on the classified documents case, and then an interpretation of the Supreme Court ruling, pretrial motions in the D.C. case. Both of those things were ongoing. When Trump was elected president earlier this month, here at CBS News, we reported that Smith was going to work on winding down these cases based on that Justice Department regulation forbidding the prosecution of a sitting president. And here we are, him saying we're doing just that in both of these cases. The appeal in the 11th Circuit of the classified documents dismissal, he's dropping that. He's asking the judge in D.C. to dismiss the 4 counts in the election subversion case, both based on that DOJ regulation. And so this is what we were long expecting. The deadline was December 2nd. So Jack Smith and his team are doing this a bit early before the Thanksgiving holiday. But here we are, where we expected after Trump was elected president.
Rob, Trump also had co-defendants in the classified documents case. Does this mean Jack Smith is also going to end the appeal in terms of their prosecution?
So interestingly, no. There were three defendants on that case. Trump, Carlos de Oliveira, who was a Mar-a-Lago maintenance manager, and then Trump's right-hand man, personal assistant, Walt Nauta, who we've seen with Trump along the campaign a lot of times on camera right behind him. They were both charged in a separate section of the indictment in the classified documents case, tied with Trump to this alleged effort to obstruct the investigation. Like Trump, de Oliveira and Nauta have denied all wrongdoing and pleaded not guilty to the charges. Their cases seem to be ongoing. The special counsel in his very short filing in Atlanta, the 11th Circuit in Atlanta, basically said this does not affect these 2 individuals because the Justice Department regulation does not pertain to them. And so it appears that their appeal is going to be ongoing. We reached out to one of the attorneys, or for all of the attorneys for all of those involved, including Carlos de Oliveira, and he told CBS News in a statement that they disagree with this decision, but they said that at the end, they believe that this case will ultimately be acquitted and Carlos's charges will also be dismissed. But here, it's quite notable that the special counsel is saying, we're dismissing this for the president-elect. We are not doing it for his co-defendants.
Caroline, what do these filings mean for these cases? Can they be picked up again after Trump's second term in office? One being, of course, the prosecution and one being the appeal.
Yeah, well, the short answer is that they won't, even if they could be. They will likely Smith probably would like them to be dismissed without prejudice, meaning they could, if they survive statute of limitations issues, they might be able to be resurrected. However, Trump will effectively nullify that possibility by, I would assume, pardoning himself for those types of issues. These cases simply aren't coming back. But, I think, as noted, it's not simply because Trump said that he would fire Jack Smith within 2 seconds of getting into office. Jack Smith is really following the rules here. And what that is specifically, their Office of Legal Counsel memoranda, one in 1973 and one in 2000, specifically dealing with this question. It is not a law on the books or any type of regulation that says specifically that the prosecution of a sitting president is not allowed to move forward in a criminal context. However, this internal body within the Justice Department has looked at the issue and they've recommended that it not be pursued. And Jack Smith is citing to this Office of Legal Counsel memoranda in both of these filings saying, we understand that this case would effectively be nullified. We could not proceed with this case when he gets into the office of the presidency. And therefore, we're extending sort of the spirit of this memoranda and the constitutional principles embodied in this to presidents-elect. And so they are, quote unquote, winding it down, which is effectively dismissal. But the upshot is that these cases are gone forever, Lindsay.
Caroline, something I want to clarify for our viewers, and you said these cases are essentially going away. Can you explain the difference between these cases at the federal level and Trump's conviction at the state level in New York related to those hush money payments, for which, again, we don't know if he's going to be sentenced for that until potentially after his first term, or it could be dismissed?
Yeah. Right. Really, really interesting issues here. Some of the same issues here, but as you noted, because they are on a state level, and Jack Smith, who is obviously the special counsel appointed at the federal level looking into specific crimes and bringing charges against Trump, they have nothing to do with each other. However, I will note that the Trump team has taken the election of Trump and noted that these principles, these constitutional principles of not moving forward with the criminal prosecution of a sitting president, should be invoked in this New York case. They are making an argument for complete dismissal of that case, not only in two contexts. One, in the context of this presidential immunity idea that we saw being handed down from the Supreme Court last July that effectively stopped the Mar-a-Lago documents case and the other federal case against election interference in their tracks. They're making one motion to dismiss based on that, and then another based on, again, this constitutional principle that the executive branch is supreme above all other branches, that the American public deserves to have a president that is not conflicted, that is not, always thinking about these types of things hanging over his head, that the American public deserves to have this a president who is free from these types of issues. And so you will see this type of argument being made by Trump's team in the New York case. And that is still really very much in the balance here.
Robert, what happens now?
Jack Smith, the case is moving forward related to those two co-defendants in Florida in the Atlanta appeal. So we'll see what happens there. But here at CBS News, our reporting is that Jack Smith, in winding down these cases, is likely going to end his term as special counsel before President-elect Trump is inaugurated on January 20th. At the end of a special counsel investigation, when everything is closed, they write a report, submit it to the Attorney General, and by regulation, under the special counsel regulations that dictate how this process works within the Justice Department, they have to then, that report has to be submitted to Congress. There's also an unclassified version that can be released publicly once it goes through the entire intelligence community clearance process. Attorney General Merrick Garland has pledged, since he became Attorney General almost 4 years ago, that any special counsel report that is completed under his tenure would be released to the public. He has done that twice now, once in special counsel John Durham's investigation into the 2016 investigation, and then in the Robert Hur investigation into President Biden's handling of classified documents. And so if history is going to dictate what happens next, we should expect potentially a report released by the Justice Department at the end of Jack Smith's investigation as well.
Robert Legary and Caroline Polisi, thank you both so much. President-elect Donald Trump has completed his picks for the top positions in his incoming cabinet. In total, it took him 3 weeks for him to announce his picks. Trump named several new selections in recent days, including Brooke Rollins for Secretary of the Department of Agriculture, hedge fund manager Scott Bessent for Treasury Secretary, and Republican Congresswoman Lori Chavez DeRemer as Labor Secretary. Now his picks will likely head to the Senate for confirmation. Here's what Maryland's Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen told our Margaret Brennan on Face the Nation.
Look, my view is this is what the vetting process is all about, the hearing process. The Senate, of course, under the Constitution, has the job of advising and consenting on nominations, and I take that responsibility very seriously. I've been troubled by some talk that President-elect Trump wants to short-circuit that constitutional approach using this recess appointment device, and it will be really important that the new Republican leader in the Senate uphold the Senate's prerogatives under the Constitution and not try to do an end run.
CBS News political reporter Katrina Kaufman is covering the president-elect for us in West Palm Beach, Florida. Katrina, President-elect Trump's cabinet is nearly complete. What are we learning about this weekend's picks and their qualifications?
Hi, Lindsay. Great to be with you. So you were just speaking about a few of his picks. He made 9 on Friday alone, a 10th on Saturday, and one who's been getting an especially positive reception is Scott Bessent. He's a hedge fund manager, and the markets have responded well to his selection. Another one is, as you mentioned, Congresswoman Lori Chavez DeRemer. She's someone who's viewed as pro-labor. The president of the Teamsters even went on X to thank Trump for appointing her, saying that he was putting his words into action. With Brooke Rollins, we know that she will be the Secretary of Agriculture nominee. She actually grew up on a farm, has a BA in agricultural development, Lindsay.
And several Trump cabinet picks, including Pete Hegseth for Defense Secretary and Tulsi Gabbard for Director of National Security, have come under a lot of scrutiny. What steps is the Trump transition team trying to take to get them confirmed, and how likely is it that it will happen?
Lindsay, we're seeing that the Trump team is really trying to facilitate these nominees who are both surrounded by some controversy. Last week, J.D. Vance even went with Pete Hegseth to the Hill to meet with senators there, where our correspondent Nicole Killian asked him point blank about an accusation against him that he sexually assaulted a woman back in 2017. Hegseth has maintained his innocence against these charges. Now, with Tulsi Gabbard, we may see a similar move. Concerns about her relate to her dealings with meeting with Syrian President Assad. She's been accused by some of being a Russian asset. But, Lindsay, really, if you look historically, there's only been 12 times where a nominee was not confirmed by the Senate, where they were rejected. It hasn't actually happened since the late 80s. And there's only one instance where it was a president of the same party. In that case, it was Republican Calvin Coolidge and a Republican-controlled Senate. And that was back in the 1920s.
Wow, interesting factoid there. Katrina, quickly, new CBS News polling reveals 59% of those polled approve of the way that Trump is handling the transition process. But a majority of Democrats are concerned or scared of what Trump will do once he takes office. What more can you tell us?
So one interesting thing there is that Democrats are more scared with this presidency than with his first term back in 2016. And I think there are a number of factors playing into this. One, you were just having a discussion about all of Trump's legal troubles. Trump is now entering the presidency under the umbrella of the Supreme Court's presidential immunity ruling that has really given him broad immunity, Lindsay. There are also promises he made on the campaign trail, such as the fact that he said that he's going to be a dictator on day one, that he's going to start mass deportation, his talk of his vendetta against those that he feels has wronged him. And he's really filled the Justice Department, once it's turned over, with his own loyalists, his personal defense attorneys who were working on these cases that are just now being dismissed by Jack Smith. So there are a lot of things that are worrying Democrats as Trump takes office for a second time.
Katrina Kaufman, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, a growing number of voters think the economy is improving ahead of President-elect Trump's inauguration. Our new polling finds 44% of Americans believe Trump will make food and grocery prices go down. 35% think that he will cause them to increase. Inflation was a major factor in the president-elect's win. CBS News Executive Director of Elections and Surveys, Anthony Salvanto, is here with me in Studio 57 to dig into this. Anthony, good to see you. So how does Trump's election impact how people are viewing the economy? Like, did you do a compare and contrast with what people were thinking when he was the candidate?
Well, you described it very well, Lindsay, in that intro, which is that we do find on net people think that his policies will make food prices go down rather than up. One of the things that I would say, recalling to your question about when he was a candidate, this is the national exit poll, right? Not our poll from just today. But look at this. When people said that inflation had been either a severe or a moderate hardship, that was the dominant view among his voters. So you see that sort of sets up the expectation, right? They expected him to do something about prices. And that continues into what we see now. The other part of this, too, is look at the ratings on the economy and why that they're moving up. Now, this is the increase that you spoke about from 36 to 42. Still not good. But the one that I point out a lot is the movement among Republicans, an increasing number who say that the economy is good. This happens when you get presidential transitions. The party that's been out of power starts to feel better about things nationally, the direction of the country, the state of the economy. When they're headed back for the White House, it would be historically within line to think that these numbers among Republicans would start going up. Same economy, but you see how much partisanship and also optimism factors into those more macro numbers.
I saw you wrote Republicans are more excited now than they were in 2016. Anthony, how are voters feeling about his economic policies and some of his picks so far?
Well, let's look at some of the economic policies. One of the things that we've seen is support, especially among his voters, for the idea of increased or putting on tariffs, right? This will be interesting because the bulk of these folks do not think that that will make prices increase. So that's number one. We'll have to keep an eye on that, right? The other part of this is when you ask about the picks, one of the things that you mentioned in the earlier segment is what should happen with those picks. Now, they do get net positive ratings, Lindsay, but there is support, even among a majority of Republicans, for the idea, as per the Constitution, let the Senate hold confirmation hearings. Don't just let Trump appoint people without those hearings. So people still have that institutional perspective going on there.
Okay. Anthony Salvanto, always appreciate you. Thank you.
Sure.
Charlotte airport workers are on strike ahead of the expected Thanksgiving holiday rush. They're protesting what they call unlivable wages. Members of the Service Employees International Union clean airplane interiors, remove trash, and escort passengers in wheelchairs. Their employers, ABM and Prospect Airport Services, have said they would, quote, take steps to minimize disruptions from any demonstrations. Well, nearly 80 million Americans are expected to travel this week, according to AAA. The busiest days for flying are expected to be Wednesday and Sunday. The latter could set an